Welcome to the High Value Sales Show of Eversprint.com. I'm Malcolm Louie, the managing member of Eversprint, and today we're speaking with Derek Abramovitch, the Chief Relationship Officer of Vigilant Global Trade Services, a provider of global trade and financial compliance support solutions. Welcome to the call, Derek.
Thank you for having me, Malcolm.
Derek, you grew your company's revenue from $2.2 million in 2014 to $4.8 million in 2017, a 115% increase. And in 2018, you hit around $6.1 million. Before we talk about how you grew your company so fast, can you briefly share what your company does beyond my quick intro and how your company differs from the competition?
Sure. What our company really does is we focus on the areas where compliance creates what I'll call day-to-day headaches, right? Where these headaches over time create problems from an operations perspective, from a cash flow perspective, but most importantly, we look at it from a regulatory perspective to make sure that our clients stay compliant. Part of the challenge in the marketplace is when it comes to compliance is it's very often a tug of war where companies have to weigh risk versus operational cost. And that is another area of expertise where we'll come in and start looking at an organization at a very different way than what our competitors might do. And we'll start with the culture. So we want to understand, what is a company's view on compliance? They look at compliance as a necessary evil. Do they understand that compliance can be strategic? Do they leverage technology? What markets do they operate, and where do they see themselves growing in the future? So first and foremost, from our perspective, we're really trying to understand what is the perspective on compliance, what is the, what investment is made towards compliance, both from a people, a process, and then a technology perspective. And because we've learned over time that compliance, especially in the world of trade, falls into different parts of an organization, we try and make it easier for our clients to work with us and partner with us to create programs that are specific to their requirements. So as an example, trade compliance can report up through a compliance function, import or export. It can report up through a finance function. It can report up through supply chain. It can report up through legal. So we believe it's our responsibility to understand where compliance ultimately resides within an organization, but make sure that the company itself understands it impacts every part of the organization. So another way to think about it is that we remind our clients that it's about the company name and not about an internal organization and the impact compliance has on it. So it's an interesting challenge because the way we talked about risk versus operational cost, you can think of the risk element as a different tug of war, where on one side, you'll have, let's say, legal that only wants to conduct business in a compliant manner, and that's their mandate. On the exact opposite end, there may be someone in sales, and what they're most worried about is getting that shipment on time to that client and making them happy. And regulatory hurdles are not something that they're really concerned about. Their primary concern is their client and satisfaction. So you can imagine the struggle it would be for a company internally to balance how much compliance versus the impact it will have on our organization to keep our clients happy and to remain competitive in the marketplace.
Right. Oh, I can totally imagine. I come from the investment banking world, and compliance was a huge deal there. And, there's extensive amount of training everyone had to do to be aware of all the policies, right? And it takes a huge amount of time for everyone to be involved with that. So yeah, I totally understand the risk side and the cost side of being compliant, and also the upside, right? Because like you said, it's all about the name, right? You don't want to have the reputation risk flare up and slap you in the face, right? Because your name is everything oftentimes.
Exactly, Malcolm. And I think one of the things that's really going to help the world of compliance in general is technology, right? So as you can imagine, companies that have to balance the risk versus the operational cost, right? If we can leverage technology so that we can provide more compliance for less money by leveraging technology, truly that is what really is going to help companies improve their compliance, mitigate their risk, but over time continue to reduce the cost, right, of mitigating that risk.
Yep, definitely. I just know from my banking days when going through the training, it was time intensive, it was tedious, right? And as I was going through it, I always would say there's got to be a better way of doing this than the way they have it set up. And I'm sure the way they have set up, it was an improvement from how it was, 1 or 2 years ago. But yeah, for sure, there's some good opportunities there to improve things. From a business perspective, you grew your revenue from 2.2 million in 2014 to 6.1 million in 2018. So you tripled your business in about 4 years. What were the 3 biggest drivers of this pretty attractive growth over the past 4 years?
I would say the first biggest driver is we understood that just because a company is a multinational company, and let's say a Fortune 1000 company, we quickly understood that when it comes to compliance, there's very little budget. And as a result, it's very difficult for people with compliance to be able to get budget to buy software or to buy tools or technology to support their organization. So what we did as a result, which I think at the time was a little different, is because of the relationships that we enjoy with software providers or technology providers in the marketplace, being solution agnostic, we were able to leverage these partnerships and develop solutions as opposed to just delivering services, whereby we'll include technology in the delivery of our managed services. And now we're able to give our clients access to the best technology without having to make a capital investment. The reason why it becomes the ultimate win-win-win is the following. It's a win for our technology partners because they get to provide their solution to a client that they would not have done business but for Vigilant bringing it through a managed service. It's a win for our client because they're getting access to the best technology without having to make a capital investment. And it's a win for Vigilant because our philosophy is that we want our clients to trust us. However, we don't believe they need to trust us. And the way we want to operate as an organization is we want to make sure that there is an audit trail and record keeping in the delivery of all of our compliance activities. So that way our clients can always have transparency and visibility in the way we deliver services, knowing that if a government agency were to come and check whether or not they were still compliant, they would know by doing their own independent validation that we have delivered all the services that we have promised. So I believe taking that approach first has been a significant differentiator for us.
Right. So how would you summarize your approach? You talk about quite a bit here. So I know you understand that the companies had very little budget to work with. So you provided a solution that was more economical, right? You provided a package of services that doesn't require a company to pay up front to get it all done. It's more of a pay-as-you-go sort of model. Is that what it is?
No, not at all. It's actually quite different than that. The analogy I would give is this. If someone, today bought a car in the last several years, in order to get that car repaired, you need a computer, right? There's a lot of technology in a car. And I would expect to go to a mechanic because they have the greatest technology available to be able to read what's going on with my car. But ultimately, the reason why I select one mechanic over the other, assuming they all have technology, is because that mechanic knows how to leverage that technology, and whatever data comes out of it, they'll know what to do with it. So what we do at Vigilant is we leverage partners' technology in the delivery of a service, but we do not charge a true premium by incorporating that technology. Instead, what we do is we feel it's our responsibility to have the best tools available to keep our clients compliant. And essentially, by leveraging this technology, it makes us more efficient, it makes us more effective, and as a result, we don't have to charge a massive premium for leveraging technology because we're able to deliver greater value over the duration of a program.
Okay. So the biggest driver of your growth, number one, then, was leveraging technology to provide your service at a more attractive price point.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would say the second element that led to our growth is the way that we build dedicated teams for our clients that are based on the level of expertise and skill set needed in compliance and industry expertise. So we understand that just because someone, for example, spent 10 years in the apparel industry delivering some type of compliance service, their background would not lend itself, for example, to a company that is in the semiconductor business or a company that's in software with heavy encryption. So rather than assign a resource that has the right background from a compliance standpoint, and then now they have to learn about a client's industry, about their products, their solutions, we don't believe that's fair to have our clients paid to train us how to provide support. We take that out of the equation. We provide dedicated teams that are based on the expertise as well as the industry. In addition to those dedicated teams, we also train backups so that it is our responsibility at all times to make sure that we can honor our contracts in terms of scope and delivery. And as a bonus to our clients, we understand that business is unpredictable. We want to make sure that we have enough trained personnel so that if there's an unplanned spike, and as a result, more compliance activity needed, we will make sure that we have enough resources to handle that spike, which would mitigate disruption to our clients and allow them to stay compliant.
Okay, so the second driver then is ensuring that you have a team of people with the right industry expertise, as well as a backup to that team, so that you can essentially deliver your service per specs and have the flexibility to account for unusual changes that might occur.
Correct. And Malcolm, specifically in our US market, one of the things that we did very early on was understand that the type of work that we do, which is much more tactical from an operational standpoint, is work that our people typically will engage within a computer. And they're leveraging technology in which they're processing the data that comes out of it. Or they're talking to people that ordinarily would not be inside the building, such as a third-party manufacturer or a broker or a freight forwarder. So our philosophy was, let's find the best person and take geography out of the equation. And our teams within the US work all remotely. And by working remotely, right, we are able to go to clients and say, we find you the best resource, as opposed to saying, we'll find you someone in this area and sort of have to put a square peg in a round hole because we're limited to a geographical area. I think that has gone a very long way towards making us successful because we work with smaller teams, because we have the right people, and by becoming an extension of our clients, we truly work seamlessly with them. So very often when working with our clients, we will leverage their email addresses so that when we are corresponding internally and externally, it doesn't look like it's Vigilant. It really looks like it's our client.
Right.
So
okay.
Really, transition from that being, a vendor or supplier and really a trusted partner of our clients.
Right. Okay. Got it. And how about the third driver, number 3?
Third driver, I think, really is the fact that we're an entrepreneurial firm. I think the fact that, Dave and I have always had the philosophy of let's make it easy. And because our philosophy is to make it easy, and the fact that we work with very large companies in almost every single major industry, they appreciate the fact that we can help overcome a lot of hurdles that they have internally. So examples are, we will start to do certain work without having all the contracts in place that other companies wouldn't be able to do, because we are more focused on helping the people than focused on how quickly or when we're going to get paid. And it's a luxury that we have as a privately held company that has no debt, that we could focus really on helping our client and not worrying about how quickly we'll get paid or how much money we'll make.
Okay, good. So can you share a little bit more about the plans for 2019? What are your 2019 plans? What are your targets? What do you see as the biggest opportunity?
It's interesting. I think the biggest opportunity for us right now happens to be in Europe, because the European market, when it comes to, I will say, trade compliance specifically, is a little further behind than what's happened in the US because of all the positive actions that governments have taken over here to protect, business and make sure we don't do business with terrorists. So a lot of the expertise that we've gained in the US market by working in almost every single major industry is something that, is very desirable in Europe. So we are spending a lot more time, in the UK, a lot more time in France. We're doing business in Ireland. There's opportunities in the Netherlands. So I think spending a lot of time growing our practice in Europe is going to be a focus. And I would say the other big initiative for us is now working with our partners to understand how they can digitally transform their solutions to embed technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning, and to continue to understand where we can automate tactical type support work and truly let our people and their people focus much more on the elements that require judgment and experience.
Okay, great. Now, how about from a revenue perspective? How much revenue bump do you expect to get from growing out your European business?
So, it's an interesting question. And one of the things that Dave and I have always talked about of business is, one, we're very, very fortunate in the fact that I would say approximately 80% of our business is recurring revenue because of the fact that we do managed services programs. So as a result, I would say our first mandate always is to find like-minded clients and not worry about revenue goals. Because if we set revenue goals, it doesn't allow us to focus on our core values and focusing on the type of clients that we want. And by focusing on like-minded clients and sticking to qualifying clients as they qualify us, it's really led to the growth that we've enjoyed. So, I always laugh about, for example, the benefit of using a CRM system in sales when you do the type of sales we do, which is binary, right? So typically CRMs are set up so that at a certain percentage of confidence, it looks like you're going to get X amount of revenue. And that's never the case with us. So, we can give numbers, but to me, we've grown because we haven't focused on numbers and we focused on doing the right things for the market. And I know it might not sound like a great answer, but it's the truthful answer.
All right. Well, truthful answers are good. So can you share a bit more about how you determine, how you find like-minded clients?
Oh, that's a great question. So one of the things that we want to understand is why a company is reaching out to us. So to date, our business comes from our strategic partnerships, alliances, clients, and other business advisors. So very often, and again, we are very, very blessed and fortunate to have this as part of our culture and the way we conduct business globally, is someone will bring a client or make an introduction to someone that has a challenge, right? And as a result, they now have budget and a pain point that needs to be solved. So that is a starting point to understand how they got into trouble and what they want to do to solve it. And if we believe that they are looking for, a solution that is the cheapest solution, for example, or are looking to create a Band-Aid but not really interested in understanding why and trying to improve for the long term, those are the type of situations we would disqualify a client. Another interesting thing, Malcolm, which is very, I think is interesting for our industry, is the following. I have a very vast network of individuals that I can reach out to every day to get introduced to practically any company globally that we want to do business with. But I would never, ever ask anyone in my network for an introduction, because in the world of compliance, if you're not aware of a pain point and you don't have budget, it's a wasted conversation. And the analogy is, it's like trying to convince an alcoholic who doesn't think they have a problem to go to AA. They might show up, but they're not going to actually cure their problem. The same thing is true in our world. So we often get requests, hey, can you help me create a business case to justify using you, right? Can you help us, explain what kind of fines or penalties are out there? And again, our view is if your company was scared about fines and penalties, they'd want to do something about it. So we do not view ourselves as a company that will go into the marketplace and change everyone's perspective on compliance. We don't believe that will happen. So we want to understand when someone is ready to do something about compliance, why, what is the commitment, and what would that working relationship look like, not only today, but in the future.
Right. Okay. So for growing your European business, what do you see as your biggest challenge in that regard?
I think the biggest challenge is always, opportunity to talk to companies because, again, we're not prospecting out there. So it's hard to grow it's hard to have a definitive growth plan. The double-edged sword to saying, hey, we're going to grow by X and not having X is also coming up with the plan to grow in terms of having a pipeline that converted to revenue over time. So I would say that the biggest challenge always is trying to understand where that next opportunity is going to come from. However, I believe we've mitigated that challenge by having very good partners in Europe, as well as in the US, that understand the opportunities to help companies in Europe and get us involved earlier. Sure.
Now, when you talk about your sources of new business, right, and coming from partners, alliances, from your existing clients, so it's essentially referral based, right? More than anything else. Is that correct?
I would say, it comes in all shapes and forms and sizes. So, we have a great strategic partnership with Descartes. And Descartes, one of the market leaders in providing global trade content. In fact, they provide global trade content to SAP for their GTS system and Oracle for the GTM system. And we've developed an incredible partnership over the years. And when they have clients that would benefit by leveraging our services, they'll make a warm introduction and not ask for anything. And by the same token, if we have clients that would benefit by their technology, and we will introduce them directly and not ask for a referral fee either, because Sure. It's the right thing. So I would say, when it comes to our software providers, like the Oracles, the SAPs, Descartes, and there's others like Integration Point that just got acquired by Thomson Reuters, or Web, which may not be as well known as others. That is really, it's a small world, so that when you establish a reputation of being independent like we are, so we're solution agnostic, we're not trying to sell anyone's technology, we're trying to give options to the marketplace, I believe that resonates. So as a result, our partners are comfortable bringing us in because they know we're just going to focus on providing value.
Right. Now, because you're depending on your partners to make the introductions for you, don't you find that flow of introductions to be unpredictable and not really scalable? Nothing that you can really turn on and off, and nothing that you can really crank up the dial?
So that you're 100% correct, and that goes to part of the challenges with Europe. So what we've done as a philosophy and now as a strategy is follows. We differentiate strategic partnerships versus networking. So for us to have a strategic partnership with another company, it means that we're engaged in collaborating and to understand what we can do to identify opportunities in the marketplace together and to bring revenue together. So those type of relationships are much more predictable in the value it will generate over the course of the year. And there's far fewer of those relationships. I would say at this point, probably 2 to 3 that I would consider fall within that category. The other category is networking, which is the category of you'll have a great call with someone, but ultimately you sort of know they'll recommend you if they happen to stumble upon a client that needs you. But they're not really going to partner with you, plan with you, and grow with you. It's, hey, if I think of you, I think you're great and I'll recommend you. So the strategic partnerships tend to, believe it or not, be a little more predictable in the type of revenue that we generated year to year. And I would say the networking is much more the, bluebird, type scenario. But to your point, it is very challenging. And we actually have brought in the last year, we now have a junior salesperson that is now focused on understanding how we can leverage social media as well as education to try and develop more opportunities to sell. But again, it still goes back to the first challenge that I said, Malcolm, right? If someone does not have a problem that they're aware of with budget, you can cold call, email, ask for networking, go meet with people. You're not going to get revenue. So does that make sense? I don't know. We have been unable to solve that part of the puzzle. You know, how do you create cold leads and over time, convert it to a sale? That is the ultimate challenge in our industry.
Right. Okay. Got it. Now, can you talk a little bit about who, in your mind, are your ideal cold leads? Beyond those that have a budget and know they have a compliance problem.
Oh, yes. I would say any company that conducts international business in which they are in a regulated industry, which is basically all of them, and in which they have either a high number of business partners that they deal with, a high number of products, materials that they import, export, or a high volume of transactions are the type of companies we support. And it doesn't matter if you're software, biotech, pharma, automotive, semiconductor. We have clients in every single one of those industries, insurance, banking. So it's truly companies that have, extremely high volumes and deal, with cross-border issues.
So why not focus on particular verticals?
So great question. So what's interesting about our industry, if you think of compliance as an industry, is that no two companies are the same. So you would be shocked if you went into an automotive company and looked at their compliance organization and saw the way they did compliance and went to their competitors, and you would literally think they were in different industries and weren't doing automotive. So we have found that even if you were to focus on an industry, it doesn't really help you because the way you do compliance may have nothing to do with the way your competitor does. You may leverage SAP, your competitor leverages Oracle. So the way it's even the way your technology is set up is completely different. So the type of regulatory measures that we cover, whether it's, for example, the classification of a product, right? Providing that classification requirement is industry agnostic. So focusing on an industry, we have not seen it to provide any additional traction from a revenue or marketing perspective.
Okay, got it. Totally understand. But imagine there still might be some verticals where it could be. I understand how the technology can differ within a firm, but the compliance to the regulatory side of things, I would have thought that'd be more consistent. Like, for example, within investment banking, my experience, the banks pretty much have compliance that are very similar.
So you would think that's the case, but how committed banks are to compliance is very different. What their risk tolerance is for compliance is very different. The technology they use is very different. And if you were to grade, right, banks on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of how compliant they are, you would find that they fall along almost the whole range. Now, I would never say a bank would probably be less than a 5, but it's going to fall between a 5 and a 10. And you can tell by the fact that banks are fined every single year for millions and sometimes billions of dollars. So you're 100% correct. But even in what you say, Malcolm, it still doesn't alleviate if they don't have budget, why are they going to work with us? So if I go focus on, let's say, the pharmaceutical industry, it doesn't overcome all the other challenges that we've talked about earlier. So saying that I work with 3 companies in pharma and trying to focus on it, it doesn't overcome, right, the lack of budget, lack of pain, lack of awareness. Because even if we make someone aware of a service that we provide and a pain that we solve, all we've done now is encourage them to try and figure out internally if anyone's interested in solving it before they'll call us. or else we now have to help them justify hiring us, which is the scenario I want to avoid, because I end up getting into the world of free consulting that never results in revenue.
Right. Yeah, free often doesn't, well, never pays the bills, right?
Exactly. And we do plenty of free consulting, and we participate in shows, and we're starting a blog, and we speak on panels. So we're very happy to share and educate. It's just we don't want to take on, those type of scenarios where we're fighting for someone to try and get budget. It just doesn't end well.
Yeah.
So if you or your listeners have a different strategy or approach for us to take, it's fine. I mean, we get solicited every single day by business development firms, inside sales, inside marketing firms, and we've seen it all. And I've told everyone, hey, if you want to work with Vigilant, we are willing to pay for success. So pay, much like how Vigilant has to bet on ourselves to be successful, we'd like to find a partner that says, we will produce results first, then charge you. We pay for these programs and never get an ROI on them.
Mm-hmm. Now, what has to happen on the corporate side for them to get the budget, get the pain, have the awareness, and then start looking for an outside company to help them with it?
I think what has to happen, are you saying what generally happens, or I just want to make sure I answer your question?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what the path is for a company, for some individual who's in charge of this, the chief compliance officer, for example. What events has to happen either within the company or within the industry for them to get a budget? What events has to happen within the company or within the industry for them to have the pain or see the pain, and also have the awareness that they need to work in their compliance, and then have them decide that they need to go to an outside vendor like Vigilant to help them with it, as opposed to doing it themselves in-house?
Okay, so number one would be some type of regulatory change that is creating massive headaches for a client. So for example, what, the regulatory measures that, President Trump enacted in terms of what's going on with trade with China. So as a result, right, of what's going on, it has created a huge amount of work for companies, right, that do business with China in terms of understanding which one of their products that they either import or export are impacted by it. So a regulatory measure like that is disruptive enough where a company understands they need to do something. So
right. Okay.
That's a really good example. A second example is an acquisition. So sometimes companies, not sometimes, very often, multinational companies are growing through acquisition. And once they acquire a company, they don't have the bandwidth to either integrate the acquired company, right? Or they don't have the bandwidth also to accommodate, right, the extra work that comes from keeping them compliant. So I would say an acquisition is another event. Number three, we've seen a lot of companies recently downsize. And when you're downsizing, it's very hard to get budget to hire additional headcount. So that's another time Vigilant becomes a very attractive offer to be able to leverage us as a managed services provider, where you have a fixed fee, predictable expense, as opposed to labor and other overhead in your company. So I would say that is another significant event. And lastly, it's the most common is when the government comes and, for example, if Customs and Border Patrol makes an inquiry about products you've been importing, that is often, the time when someone reached out to someone like Vigilant. If OFAC goes to a company and starts questioning whether or not they've done proper screening, vetting as they export, that would be another time. So, that's much more of a government providing notice to a company that, in order to avoid trouble, please respond to our request for information.
So when they get a government inquiry, is that too late for you to help them?
It depends upon the type of government inquiry, right? So if it's an inquiry sometimes, then yes, we can come in, and what we can do is we can help our clients, for example, review their programs, optimize it, correct anything that has not been corrected to date, and then go back to the government and show them what measures have been put in place so that they can avoid any future, penalty or fine. And we've done that for several clients.
Okay.
Sometimes we don't know about it until after the penalty or fine has been rendered, right? And at that point, to your point, it's too late. However, there's still a requirement to make sure that they adhere to, right, not just the paying the penalty and fine, but making sure they fix the problem that got there. So in that case, it's more about assuring the government that, not only have you paid the fine, but you've also addressed the issues that they were concerned about that led to the fine to begin with. Right.
Got it. All right. 3 last questions for you. First one, if Vigilant had a billboard, and what would be your billboard message? And keep in mind that people only have 6 seconds to read a billboard before they drive by it.
I think it's still our tagline, which is we make your day-to-day, compliance-related headaches go away.
Okay. Sounds a lot of text on a billboard for 6 seconds to read. But yeah, I'm sure you can probably tighten it down.
I got to be honest, we're not the type of firm that you read on a billboard, because if you go ask 99% of people out there, even people that are in my family and Dave's, what is trade compliance, what we do, they wouldn't understand. So, I can come up with something sexy, but people would drive by it anyways because they don't understand what we do.
Yeah. Well, what you would do if you were to do the billboard strategy. So the question is more to get your 6-second message as opposed to using a billboard. But, but what one company had done, they actually put a billboard in front of a prospective client they wanted to engage, and they literally popped it right there. And it was able.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, for us to have a general billboard, it'd be like, do you know who you're exporting, importing to, and are you compliant? Right? And just maybe ask a couple of questions and let them think about that. And then, maybe that would be enough of a reason to get them to thinking about something they don't think about to call us.
Yeah, true. And can you recap again who your ideal clients are and the best way for them to reach your team?
I think, for us, the ideal client are companies that are engaged in international business, right? Either shipping products, cross-border, import or export, or companies that are engaged in transactions where it's international. Any one of those scenarios are scenarios where we can help companies. And I also want to make sure that I'm clear that we also will work with technology startups, because nowadays you can start a website and all of a sudden you have an e-commerce store and you have people, right, that are buying products or services from your website globally. At that point, you are now an international business without realizing it. So again, we're very interested in giving back and helping companies. So, typically our clients happen to be Fortune 1000 and very large, but we can help companies of any size that want to be compliant.
All right. And the best way for them to reach you and your team?
I think the best way is either go to our website at, vigilantgts.com, or feel free to reach out to me. And I'm always happy to talk to someone. And my email is very simple, derek@vigilantgts.com.
All right. Would you like to spell out vigilantgts.com just so that people have the right spelling?
VIGILANTGTS.com.
All right. Thanks for joining us today, Derek, and sharing how you accelerate your company's high-value sales.
Malcolm, thank you for giving us an opportunity to talk about Vigilant and to provide a little education about the world of trade and financial compliance.
We've been speaking with Derek Abramovitch, the Chief Relationship Officer of Vigilant Global Trade Services, about his company's rapid growth. For interviews with other fast-growing, high-value sales companies, or to learn how we can accelerate your firm's high-value sales through automation, visit eversprint.com.